Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today, we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. I have been in a committed marriage since 2007. I'm not going to pull any punches on myself. I have been drunk for the entire relationship. Various levels of intensity. Some days a few beers, some days hitting the liquor bottle. Always functional, steadily employed, and meeting the needs of my family to a fault. Meaning, all meal prep, most child care, all laundry, and basic household duties, with no real expectations of anyone helping, even if I asked directly. I stayed buzzed because I thought it helped me navigate my tasks happily. I would nap in the early evening and be very grumpy if woken. I would be hungover in the morning and have very little patience for my family asking me to do things they could do themselves. I wasn't always pleasant. In fact, I was doing more harm to myself and them than good. I'm 70+ days sober and will never go back to what I was. My wife always worked. Less than the 40+ that I did, but always contributed and was never unemployed, etc. We have had trials and tribulations. Grand adventures and beaten scenarios even when the odds were against us. She was my best friend and my greatest adversary. The non-stop driving home of her points or requests went beyond nagging, it was terrorism. But I loved her for it. It was how she communicated, and I accepted and attempted to comply as soon as possible. Our fights were loud and passionate. Our lovemaking was frequent and matched the intensity of our personal battles. We operated like this for 17 years. Periods of calm, me continuing to self-medicate, huge blow-ups, and then back to calm. That was the way it was. In 2020 and 2021 she was in a professional position and developed a working relationship with her boss. They would text after hours, but it seemed platonic and about work-related topics. I never discouraged the relationship. Their line of work required regular communication, debate in direction, and personal insight into those they served. I got it. Quite frankly, their communication took some heat off of me trying to assist her in these matters and allowed me to focus on things I enjoyed during the night hours, mostly indulging in booze and comic books. Sometimes my wife would express her frustration with him to me. He was her boss, he wasn't respecting her opinion or suggestions, and he wasn't following through with the promises he would make. I'd help her navigate a few things. I was in management at the time and had some experience on what to do when an employee felt this way, and would try and make suggestions on how she could succeed professionally. There were a few times she would go out with her team after work and celebrate the end of their current work commitment, someone's birthday, or say goodbye to someone leaving their workspace for alternative career paths. I always supported this and never thought it would be an issue for us. I wanted her to have friends and explore the world through different people and personalities. I am outgoing, she isn't. I was available as a designated driver if needed, but that was only kind of needed once. I met her out and hung out with her until she was sober enough to drive her car home. We had some snacks, it was nice. There was another instance where she asked if I was cool with her meeting her boss and his kid at a local park with our kid. Our children were of vastly different ages, but since it was 2020 and everyone was a bit stir-crazy, I didn't see the harm or the big deal. The fact that she asked me if I had a problem with it alone led me to believe that she would respect my opinion if I said no. I didn't, and I supported it. Flash forward to mid-2021, and her boss wasn't able to obtain the position he was applying for and decided to leave the current position and join another team in a different location. I think there was a goodbye celebration, and that was that. From what I understood, they maintained a friendly relationship via text, keeping each other informed of their current doings and gossiping about his old work site, etc. I did occasionally see a message on my wife's phone that led me to believe that they were being a bit more personal now, but I would ask her about it, and she would tell me it was platonic. I didn't mind. I believed and trusted her. I would never access her phone out of respect, and I never really thought I needed to. At one point, she told me that he and his family, wife, young kid, would be joining us at a sporting event to support our kid. I found that odd, but I was told we were playing a game in his home district and he had experience with the sport and thought it would be fun to come. I supported it. At this point, I was getting dark vibes, but I chalked it up to my own insecurities and didn't want to be a jerk. He came to the game with his kid, was talking loudly on a cell phone about a recent accomplishment he had made, and then was kind of personable once his focus was on the game. His wife joined us near the end of the match and we all walked out together. I smiled, I shook hands, and I was cool. I did later ask my wife if I should have been friendlier, and she said I was fine and wasn't even sure why he came. Flash forward to 2023. I was sorting through some old devices we had in our junk drawer. I was looking for an old phone that I could use as a permanent monitor for a cool little drone we had that was just collecting dust. I fired up a phone that was my wife's. Not her last phone, but the one before it. Once powered up and accessible, I had my wife's correspondence with her boss laid before me up until about mid-2021. It was personal, it was sexual. Pictures were shared as well as fantasies. I was absolutely sick. At first, I buried my knowledge, knowing that she hadn't had physical contact with him since our last meeting at the sporting event. I had no idea how to proceed. It felt like my world just popped out of existence, and now I am floating in a void with no past or future. I started dropping little hints that I knew something was going on with her and him. I was met with assurances that I was crazy and that I must be doing something similar with my own co-workers to be accusing her of such things. We would fight sometimes when I was drunk over this, but each time I would be told that I'm crazy and must be projecting my own actions on her. I only really had access to the mid-2021s. When she required a new phone about that time, she was very nervous and jerky when I was transferring her information and getting her new phone functional. She sat hip to hip with me. I made sure I didn't explore outside the activation and ensured I factory reset her old phone. At the time, I knew she was being over the top about this, but I thought showing her that I trusted her would only strengthen us, so I did as she asked. Thinking back on it now, she was physically shaking at one point during the process. I moved forward, but it still bugged me. I wanted her to admit it, and I didn't want to admit I was snooping. It seemed they settled down but were truly unsure. Right after Thanksgiving is when it got serious. Again, I'm drunk. She was needling me about something unrelated, and I got super loud. I straight up told her I knew and had proof. I had seen the pictures sent, and they were inappropriate for the friendship I was being led to believe they had. She broke a little and said I was right. She did tell them that she was sorry, and it's been a long time since they interacted with each other in that way, and it's not like that anymore. By almost Christmas time, I had so much more evidence. I was consumed, and I did everything I could to expose the full extent of the emotional affair. I accessed her texts, and I accessed her photos on both her phone and Google. I accessed her maps and histories. Drunk again, I confronted her. We then spent the entire night texting back and forth about my theories. She deflected for most of the evening, but then, as things were settling down and as I was about to concede and get some sleep, she admitted she was physical once and gave him an oral. Even though he left his position at her job, it turns out he filled a summer position, and that information was never shared with me. At some point, before he left that position, they found an opportunity to sneak off and perform that act. I then proceeded to lose my mind completely. I told her we would never be physical again. I texted him and threatened him and his family's security. I would inform them of the affair. I proceeded to drink heavily and then ultimately tried, half-assedly, to kill myself. It was a total nightmare mess. He responded to my texts in an offhand way, saying that it was my own fault and he'd like to explain. He tried to ask for a conversation about it after his work shift and then refused to find the time before then due to my impatience. I entertained him for a little bit but ultimately contacted his wife via Facebook. She responded oddly. She thanked me for the information, which was really just the typing of a crazy person with very little evidence presented, and blocked me. I told her they had an emotional and physical affair and that I had phone records to prove their correspondence over the years. I didn't get to offer her the screenshots, pictures, or even the map data. I was holding back on those because I wasn't sure what condition she was in. His wife is a powerful professional and mother. She is also sick with a disease that has the potential to take her facilities from her a little or a lot over time. I wanted her to know what a degenerate her husband was, but I didn't want to overwhelm her either. Quite honestly, I think I gave him enough time to prepare to intercept my message via her Facebook and dodge the whole situation. I have no idea how things pan out at his house. Meanwhile, at my own home, I was being carted off by the police and EMT to the hospital. Once released, my wife and I spoke very clearly about everything. I was drunk, I was ignoring her emotional needs, I was doing dangerous things, and I was putting my child at risk. I was poisoning myself in a variety of ways and spending money we could not afford. She was keeping secrets, she cheated on me emotionally and physically. She would have never told me and would have kept this between then and the day she died. Flash forward to today. We are absolutely perfect. We love each other harder every day. I have forgiven her just as she has forgiven me. We will never hurt each other like we did before, and we will keep our communication open, honest, and course-correct for each other to maintain our happiness. We can't go back. We can't forget, but we can forgive. She is the most amazing person I have ever known, and I am not going to let bad decisions define us. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you next.